Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from Inception Podcast. We are back again, and this afternoon, I think it's this afternoon, we are in the UK, 3:15. Hello, Michael. What time is it where you are?
Gloria, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And the time on the East Coast is 10:16. And the date they tell me is September 16th, but I'm a little bit suspect of that, to be quite honest.
I would be suspect about that one. So I'm once again in the future, and I'm going to tell you we're time traveling. So the future is good because I'm here and I'm getting it all ready for you, Michael. So when you get here, you're on it like a car bonnet, okay?
That's exactly how I like it. I like it when I arrive that there's a nice bed waiting for me, maybe
everything
a cup of tea,
to
lay down and rest, and after a long journey. So a fantastic host. That's one of the things which I think is so beautiful about the human family is our desire to be good hosts and to take care of each other when they travel. So I'm always pleased.
I'm the best then, because on the time traveling spectrum, I'm the queen of time travel, because most of my podcasts are from the USA and I'm always in advance preparing the way for you. On that note, I will introduce you. Well, you'll introduce yourself in a second. I'd like to say thank you everyone for watching Inception Podcast. I have an auto cue here. I have to read this and be slightly professional, which is exceptionally hard for me. Okay, so Inception Podcast can be found on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, Chris Matthew, where you can find amazing, inspirational, and conscious expanding interviews. And some are Forbidden Knowledge News, Beyond Classified, Day Zero, Dawson Files, Raised by Giants, and Inception Podcast. Now I've done that part. So just a brief intro, Michael, for the audience before we get into our conversation on consciousness. Who are you? What are you about? What do you do?
What do I do? Well, I guess the best way to describe it is, or at least at this moment, because it'll change depending upon the moment. But I like to think of myself as a gonzo conspiracy researcher. And what I mean by that with the gonzo is the research which I do has to be directly related to me and my experience with it, as opposed to research, which is this is a topic I find interesting and let me go and research it. And that would be something different than my actual experience. I don't see any, I guess supposedly you can have that separation, but I am mostly interested in how my own personal experience, life journey ties into the areas which I research. And that's everything with conspiracy, synchronicity, consciousness, all this stuff about trying to have a better grasp to understand exactly, what is this human experience at this given moment.
Right. I love it. And I think that's the best way to do it. If we all stuck to our own truth and worked on it, we'd go far. Anyway, we've done that. That bit's all over with. Here we go. We're going to go down the rabbit hole, I hope. And we could get lost with you, most probably, after the conversation we had the other day. It's going to be super. So I'm going to start the conversation and ask you, Michael, from your truth, from your perception, from your beingness, what is the human experience here on 3D World? What is it?
Oh, now we're going to start with a big question. We're going to not start without any meatball softballs, which I could hit out of the park. We're going to start straight with a fastball.
No parachute, down the rabbit hole.
Straight down it. So, I like to begin, or the way I perceived everything comes from the foundational perspective of it's a mystery. I don't know how we got here. I don't know who we are. I don't know what we're supposed to do. And so from that perspective, that really opens up every possibility. Mm-hmm. So I begin with that. And then, I almost look at it as maybe a puzzle, maybe like a game, maybe something to be solved. And the things which I'm most interested in are like the very tangible, the very material, you know, the actual experiences, the land itself, the experiences we have, and then looking at that as, you know, some degree of like the most tangible reality we have, but also recognizing that that's still in a mystery. So using that to go into the mystery. And what I'm trying, that's always, I think, like a fine way for a human being to go about their lives, regardless of any time in which they had been incarnated. And, you know, maybe we're all incarnated at the same time, whatever, like without getting into that. But that being said, you know, having been on this particular kind of path for a while, I think now more than ever, I mean, now, this is the way which we navigate these types of skill sets, because what is happening on Earth, the storyline which is unfolding before us, is requiring us to look at everything in a very, very new way. And, you know, where it's going to bring us, you know, I don't know, but I know where I don't want to go with it or other ways of looking at it. So like, I look at everything which has happened. I really like to look at culture and the popular culture and seeing like how that shapes people and recognizing, you know, what is authentic and then what is convoluted, and trying to get to like a more authentic base so that then we could navigate around these areas. And with all of that hope, or with all of that purpose, for the hope of like maybe having a better understanding of like that mystery, which I talked about before. Like,
okay.
You know, what is all this? I don't know.
Okay. Let's stop there. So let's pull it back in and go back inward. It's a really good analogy. And it's a truthful analogy. And it's a perfect analogy, because even though I label my beingness with I am consciousness, having the human experience, it's just a label. Ultimately, none of us know, whilst we're in this physical suit, the actual truth per se. So there's, you know, if someone says to me, I don't know, I say, well, that's a massive quantum leap that you don't know. It's when you turn and say, well, I'm this, I'm that, I'm my beliefs, I'm my identity, I'm my color, I'm my that. Then I go, oh my God, no, I can't go down that road. So yeah, you don't know is one of the best answers from my perception. But on that, okay, the human experience, and how you stated, which I think is wonderful, that you have work, research, and respond to your own personal experiences. Okay, so now I want to go deeper on that one. So if I say to you again, okay, my understanding is that I'm not the body. I'm experiencing being the body here, obviously. I can't identify with it, and I could say I'm a spiritual being, or I'm a conscious being, or I'm a Christ consciousness, or I'm just energy, or anything like that. Have you ever touched on your consciousness, anything like that you recognize you're more than what you've been defined as? Can you do that?
Yes. And so
where would you take that? Where would you take that now? So how would you define that, you?
So let's take a couple steps back. So you're talking about like, you know, what it is that we identify with. And then we get into these like, you know, being a human being, like we identify with something, and then that becomes our experience, like whatever we choose to identify with. And so that bit, we got that. I want you to, instead of going out externally with all the labels and everything, I want you to come back in again and go, so if you identify as being a human being, then you're observing the human being. You've got the intellect rationale of knowing I'm identifying that I'm the human being. So you're before the human being. What are you in that human experience? So I play with that, and I play with that very, very like purposefully or consciously. Yeah. And so, and again, so the reason I was doing that setup is because it's the power of belief. Like whatever we choose to believe, like becomes our experience. And when you recognize that is inherent to the human experience, like you can't separate it. So like you're knowledgeable about like, this is what I choose to believe. And I recognize as soon as I choose to believe or identify with something, well, then like I'm kind of solidifying to that. Okay. So that being said, I like to play with kind of like what you're saying, like, from the furthest extreme of this type of thought would go to like, there is no mic. There is no mic. The most real thing which I can say that I can describe about my experience is that we'll use life force for like a lack of another word. Like whatever this aliveness is, which encourages or which is experienced in this material plane, like, yes, I'm that. And then there comes a level from like that aliveness, which everything that's alive is part of. Then it becomes like more and more specific to the individual, and like all the way to the point, like, I'm completely identified with my personality and my likes and my interests and like my ethnicity and the religion I was. So like on that continuum, I like to play with that. And so I would say like a nice little middle point. And again, this is just a model I use to explain it. This is kind of a belief, but I'm playful with it. I'm not really that identified. So you go from this point of like everything being like aliveness, whatever the hell that means. And then at some point you have like the non-physical aliveness, which is associated with this body. So like whether we want to call that like maybe soul for like a lack of a better word, like so you have that. And so I play with that, like, looking at like the total and depending upon where I am, like in my journey, like, am I having like a really hard time with like what's going on in my personal life, like struggles with relationships or like any sort of that shit. I'll go and be able to put myself in the consciousness of like, okay, it's just, there's no me, there's just aliveness and there's that. And then like, when I don't need to go to that place, and certain people like live their whole lives like that. I like to be an individual. I like my own individual experience. I'm like, okay, well then let me go to this like soul's thing. And like, I'll be open to this idea of like, what's my soul's journey? Like, why am I here? And then from there, like maybe play a little bit more specifically into like astrology. Like astrology is a big thing for me.
Hold on, we're going out. We're coming back in. Come back in. So like, I'll go and like, so I'll look at all of these different levels. So it's like, sometimes I'll play with the astrology, but I think that's like more of an identification than, let's just say, soul, because the soul would be before the astrology. But then the soul is more identified than just like the whole big picture of being alive, whatever alive is. And so for me, depending upon my internal moods and feelings and where I am, like I choose which role to play with. We talked a little bit about names in the very okay, hold on. Remember, we're having a conversation. We will talk over each other. This is not an interview. We're having a Zoom to Zoom room. I love the word that you use, one word. I love, thank you for that. That was really interesting. I love the word you use is play, because from my perception, I play the human being. So I love it when I hear another say, I play this, or I play that, I play the medium, or I play the mother, and I play with the experiences. And I love hearing that. So do you find with that on the human experience, when you play with the experience, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, that in my case, I'm like the observer of it. So that I'm not attached to it like a cause and effect attach. So there's no suffering with it. I can get pissed off, I suppose, you know what I mean? But I don't really go with it. It's there and then it's gone a second. So when you say play with your human experience, could you give me a bit more information what you're defining here when you play with the human experience? Because I do it all the time. I'm playing a podcast host at the moment and having a fantastic interview with you. So
that was exactly the example where I was going. So we're talking about names and you're like, is that your name, that MIQUAN? I'm like, no, that's just me playing with an identity of a name. I've got like 10 different plays of like my name with different, characters I play. And then like I can go what in my own like inner world, my own inner experience, like I'll get caught up in the role which I play.
Yes.
And I notice when I get caught up in the role which I'm playing, and then I'm like, oh, I don't like this anymore. I don't like that. I don't like where I just painted myself in a corner, and then I'll go and change. And that's what I mean. Like then like I'll step back to something not as specific. Like, okay, well, let's just look at astrology, or maybe that's it. Let's go look at soul, or let's just look at like, you know, I do these like internal things, which I use to move out of those spaces, which I'm like, okay, I don't like how this feels right now. And like,
I love it. Yeah, I love it. I do that. I say, I'm not doing this no more. I'm not. And then I shift off. I really resonate with your analogy there, and I love it. That's fantastic. Okay, so on the first door that we've opened, we've actually opened the first door. What is the human experience? And we've also we've touched on the second door to open. If I'm not my beliefs, but we're going to go deeper now. If I'm not my beliefs, and I'm not Michael or McWann or Gloria or whatever, who truly am I? Now, you did mention we have to use terminologies, and you picked up the word the soul. So if that's the word label you're comfortable with, I'm comfortable with soul.
Yeah, and that's all it is a word label.
Okay, so you're saying you've made the statement when we opened the first door that you'll use the word soul. It's the soul, the inner, the soul. So the next door we're going to open and go in and down is when, who am I? Who are you? So you know you're the soul, but can you give me its attributes, its essence, its substance, what is that you are?
Now that's a really good question. And you know, you could look at this a couple different ways. Part of the reasons why I like to play with so many costumes, you know, maybe we'll use archetypes depending, is because, you know, I don't really know what that answer is. Like, I'm like, why is it that I can slip into this role so easily and then go into another? And going back to that word label of soul. So I look at the soul, like the way that I conceptualize it. If I'm going to try to conceptualize it in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's the individual, that's the first level of individualization from like everything. And I don't really know if there is something like inherent to what that soul is. Like maybe it's just a perspective, because, you know, one of the things which I looked at a lot is like my astrology from these different perspectives. And there's certain things that I recognize more than the other, but I'm like, well, I can play this one. And there's a logic system, which is very true of these different astrological makeups of like what I'm supposedly to be. And I'm like, but that's not me. If I can be both of those, then I'm not inherently one of those. My soul, I don't know if my soul necessarily, and that's why I'm saying, like, I don't have an answer to that question, because like, I don't know if like the soul has like an inherent sort of uniqueness to it. I just think it's like where the first individuation begins.
I think that's a wonderful response. I love that. That's an honest, truthful response. And as I've said before, if someone says, I know I'm not the body, mind, and belief systems, but I don't know what I am, I think, hallelujah, that's fantastic. More discernment on that. And yeah, if you find out, I just use labels too. I use labels too, because we're forever learning. We're forever experiencing different experiences. So I like that analogy. Okay, right. So now we're going to the third door. Okay, so we're now really down the rabbit hole. I've got the chairs out. I've got coffee or I've got alcohol. You take your pick. We've got the lamps on because we're camping out for the night in door 3. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready. Okay, so with all that we've just discussed, and coming from the back of that, why are we here? Why are you here? We use soul and all the things you've just said before. Now I want to ask you, well, why are you here? talking to me on the Zoom? Why are you here? And why did you have all them experiences and the ones that are to come? Why are you, the true you, here?
I feel like every one of my answers is like, I don't know.
You
I
can't
don't know.
do that. Yes, you
so,
do.
So this is, I don't have an answer to why I'm here. And I ask that question a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, and I answer that with like, at certain times, I'm like, I want to have a definitive answer. And then at other times, like, it's just like kind of like a question to like allow life to unfold. One of the things which you know, how I interact with life or reality is like I try to go back to the stuff which is you know, before definition, like I'll call it baseline reality. That's just a natural world.
Yeah.
And you look at water and stuff like that, and water just kind of goes where water goes, you know, the path of least resistance. And, you know, you ask the question, you're like, you know, what brought you here? You know, we're having this conversation. Well, in a lot of ways, and maybe this is, you know, maybe you could make an argument that this is just like, you know, like a way of getting out of responsibility or answering questions. It's like, I just go where the life takes me, where the life which I leave takes me. And so it's like, I just meet with what's in front of me.
That's lovely.
So I don't know. I'm just going with like what comes to me.
No, I love the I don't know. No, it's not to make an argument out. It's to speak. These conversations are rare to be had in the public domain about consciousness and the self. And that's the whole point of the podcast, that we can set up these conversations. And when we go and sometimes I go, I don't know. And then I listen to someone come on my podcast, and when they've got off, I go, fuck, what? Wow, I never thought of that. And it just, so I don't know is okay. It's perfect. What I like about your beingness is how you just flow and you flow and you play and you flow. So it's not, as you would think, is a negative answer to say, I don't know. So, you know, for me, I'm one of these people, you know, if you say, I don't know, that is denoted as, oh, you're stupid or you don't know something. But no. When you don't know something, it's a truth. It's best to speak your truth than to sit there and go, oh, I know who I am and I know where I'm from and I know, and you know jack shit. It's a belief system that your parents or your school or your culture's given you. So please, I don't know is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Right.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, that's the way I
don't think many know. I don't think, you know, some of us on the individual consciousness, we all have a sort of an idea, but we're not quite sure. And it is like, for me, it's a game and it's like hide and seek. I'm here, I'm not here. I mean, anyway, we all have different perceptions on this and different truths. And that's the beauty of the human experience. That's why we have the podcast. So I love that answer too. But now we're going to go a bit deeper. Okay. Now, I happen to know that before I go any further, you're a great researcher. You really delve deep. Okay. You really go into things. And you're very curious. You're very inquisitive. And before you speak, you check it out first. So your truth, your experience, right? Whatever reality brings you. And I just preempted that because, you know, I've taken you so far down the rabbit hole. Now, from what we've just spoke about, when we go to door 4, we go through this door. From your truth, what is this reality that we're in? Now, many say it's a matrix, it's a simulation, it's an illusion. I use many analogies. I do say normally it's like a dream state or we're in a film, you know, it's an illusion. However, at the same time, we create our reality. So now I'm aware that we create our reality, we manifest it by choice. So this is why this door is really expands the conversation out, because it's trying to get to run parallel the conversation. Well, I manifest it. However, is it real? Is it not real? What is it? If I am a soul, if I am consciousness, and that's where we start blending them together. So I'm going to ask you now What is this 3D reality, Michael, that we're in?
Have you ever seen like in the congressional hearings and like they ask the person who's up there and then they like respond, they ask the question, then they turn to the lawyer and then they go and they say the same thing all the time. It's like, I'm going to plead the fifth on this. And so instead of saying plead the fifth, I'm going to be like, I don't know, but this is what.
No,
but this is what. So I
don't know that congressional hearings because I'm in the UK. However, I understand. I will tell you, you're not allowed to plead the fifth on this one.
Okay.
I'm not allowing it. Go on, off you go.
So the way I approach it, I try not to answer that question. Like I've thought about all of those certain things, and for me, having life experience, being Mike, is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm here. What does matter to me is understanding how here works. Mm-hmm. And like, there is a strange fluidity. There's a strange fluidity between like your internal world, what you're thinking and all the stuff going on in your head, and the outer world. And there's this feedback loop. And that to me is the most interesting sort of thing. And this is like, goes back to like trying on these costumes, playing with different archetypes, like being what life gives me, because maybe it's because I think it's too much responsibility to try and explain like what this is. I love the ideas. Like I love to hear different ideas. I love to hear like, what was it, like 5 or 6 years ago when that dude out of like Oxford started like introducing, this is all a computer simulation. Like, I like that as an idea. Well, how does that change anything? I don't know. It doesn't change anything.
I'm with you.
But what it does is it allows, for me at least, like more playfulness, more like, you know, not so bogged down into like
and more choice.
And more choice. And then like this kind of like experimentation of like, well, okay, well, if I know that that is seemingly the rules of how this experience works. And this is why I was talking about belief in the earlier part, because belief is so important. Whatever you identify with, whatever you create your feedback loop with, that's going to be part of your experience. So then the discernment of like, well, what am I believing? What has been taught to me? What have I learned from my actual experience? What of my actual experience am I still defining based upon something which I was still taught? Like all of these questions. And so like, I'll come to a place where like, you know, I like to think a lot about like blind spots. I just don't know. So at the blind spot, if I want to, I'm going to make a choice. And so I like to go back to the, you know, there's that famous quote, which is like the most important question you can ask yourself is this a dangerous universe or is this a friendly universe? Mm-hmm. And so when I'm deciding on like what this is, what is this experience? Like I'm going to choose, at least in the most general sense, it's a friendly universe. It's meant to be fun, enjoyable, like whether we want to say learning or whatever, have experience. I'm not certain.
So that choice, so no, that's brilliant. That's brilliant from your truth. That's brilliant. It's really interesting. So from your truth, you've chose the experience you want and you manifest it, hence you experience it.
Yes. Yes. But then it's also like, I recognize so much, like I'm very much like, I follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And that's made a lot of people in my life crazy because, you know, they see
if you go, come on, Mike, if you go around going, I plead the Fifth Amendment to everybody, it's going to make them crazy. Okay. So no, but I do get it.
But I look back at how my life has unfolded and how like all of these things, like I know what I was consciously thinking when when a fork in the road has been presented in my life and I went to the left or to the right or what have you. I'm like, I remember this is what I was at least consciously thinking, and then seeing how that lines up so perfectly. And to me, that is a reassurance. Like this is the way, at least for me, to play this game of life experience because it seems to work for me. I like where it's taken me, and recognizing recognizing that when I share these gonzo research stories, like I see that there are two things generally which which happen when I share my stories. One is I try to be kind of entertaining, and so like just from the pure level of like, oh, I'm being entertained by the novelty of listening to this dude tell a story. Like there's that part of it. But then the other part is it's a demonstration, not necessarily a demonstration saying like, this is how it should be done, but like, hey, this is a way that it could be done. This is a permission slip in which you can go and like take this little piece from me and then apply it into your life, because I do that from other people all the time. I'm inspired by other people, and then I work that into my own system.
Yeah. No, I like your answer. It's really interesting, and I like your answer. And you thought you tried to plead the Fifth Amendment, and I wouldn't allow it, and I won, and you answered. So 1-me, Michael. You did great there. I love the play on the words when, excuse the pun, play. I play the part, I play the role, play the form. I don't get bogged down, because I can resonate with that coming from my truth. I say it nearly on every podcast, and I'll say it again, and there's a reason for it, in case someone doesn't watch all my podcasts. Naughty, is how I look at it. We're both, me and you, Michael, having the human experience. And so if I get an orange and I cut the orange in half, I give you half of the orange and I eat half of the orange. We'll both experience eating the orange, but the experience will be totally different. And we will describe our orange experience not only just in a different language, different grammar. You could be a positive, I could be a negative. So this is a richness of having this conversation on this podcast. Is we're both experiencing being human, the human, because we're told we're called human, so that's what we call ourselves. And it's the way and the diversity and the richness we're both experiencing. But what I do resonate with you is the play of form, because coming from my truth at the moment is like I'm this soul or conscious being, and I'm playing peekaboo, hide and seek. I'm playing a role. So here comes the role. And then I don't like this. I'm getting out there, and boom, I'm out. And then I make a different choice, and I manifest and go and experience something else. And then it comes back on again. I go through that. I play the human, whatever that is. So that's mine. So I use that in light terms of I play the role. I'm playing the role of this. Tonight, I'll be playing the role of a medium on my Zoom later on. I'll be the medium. So, but that's not who I am. Does that make sense? So
completely.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're an amazing researcher, and he's coming on the live chat show later on in the year. We're going to find out what this man does. He is amazing. Right, back to the conversation. So I'm going to ask you a question. I do not know, or I do know and I've forgotten, whether you've experienced this or not. So if you haven't experienced this, it's okay. You can still give not your opinion, but your understanding, what you think it is. Okay. Door number 5. From your truth and what you've expressed about yourself so far, who is E.T.? Now, when I use E.T., it's an umbrella label. Under that could be E.T. as we know E.T. It could be angelic realm. It could be Palladians. It could be millions of whatever, Trevor. I'm not talking about the spirit world, like deceased loved ones. I'm not talking that. I'm talking ET beings, other dimensional beings, or whatever you want to call them. From your truth, from your reality, and your experience, if you don't know, you don't know, because I don't know if you've experienced. Who is ET to you? ET.
So I liked how you framed up ET meaning like a whole bunch of different things. Yeah. Again, this is like the concept. We need concepts in order to articulate. So, I'll kind of look at it like the excuse me.
It's all right.
this experience of being human on what we're calling Earth. Like we're seemingly in a self-referencing bubble of experience.
Okay. Yeah.
And, so that's what being human is, and going to sleep and all the things of just like the regular stuff being human. That ET, that whatever, that is something outside of that bubble, which is able to then like somehow like go into the bubble, like, one level up, and what and whom they are, whether that's me and you, whether that's like something else, I don't know. But there is, and like, I'm open to the idea, like we talked about identifying with beliefs and stuff, like I'm open to the idea. In fact, I like how it feels, is like, yeah, there's something out there which sees this in a greater perspective, and they are having various, like a variety of roles.
I like that answer. I mean, me and you had an off-camera conversation the other day, didn't we? About other energy experiences. We won't go into it, but what, the synchronicity of it, which was other than what we thought. Now, when, with the ET, which we can even call the paranormal, but we will not be using the spirit world, so to speak, even though it's all connected, from my truth. But at the moment, we're talking about. Okay, so I'm gonna have to hang on to this one a bit longer. So you're aware I am one of the human beings. I've experienced them all my life, hence I paint them. They're on my walls since childhood, and there's millions of others like that. You're aware of UFOs, so you're aware there is something other, and I like your description of we're in one bubble and they're outside the bubble. There's many describe it as dimensions or parallel units. It's just a way to try and articulate what we're trying to express.
It's really just a concept.
Yeah, it's a concept. Okay. On that, then can we now we're going to have to spend a few days down the rabbit hole now. So we've got the campfires going. Okay, are you ready? Because I want you now to go through the next door with all that we've said so far. And you can't do the Fifth Amendment, otherwise, it's just not good. I won't allow it.
It doesn't work in the UK, so it's like it
doesn't.
It doesn't. So okay, my hands
got
are
it. You got it a lot. You've got it. Only if I'm in America, then it's going to work. But here we don't have that law. So
all right, fair enough.
How do you? It doesn't matter if you don't know, but if you could try and see what comes out, so to speak, how do you think us beings, this souls or conscious beings we are, how do you think we're connected to them? What's the reference? How are we connected? Is it consciousness, or is it what is it that we're connected? Because we interact, and spirit world is part of it, yeah, but that's not where I want to go. We interact with them in the 3D world. So what's your thoughts on how we're connected to them?
I think that those lines of connections would be not of the material realm.
Wow.
And so whether that we want to define that as consciousness, like in the beginning, I painted a picture of like, there's a certain level where like just being alive, like on those higher levels of like where like everyone's alive, or like
I'm with you.
Somewhere like it's the question is above my pay grade. Like I don't really know the answer to that, but for me, it's not been a material experience in the way like I've woken up and I've been on a ship and I've been probed, or anything like that. Like I don't.
It doesn't have to be
my experience, but I also think this is like me trying to understand what the life journey of being Mike is like, I'm seemingly in such a deep connection with something else, whatever this something else is, that it doesn't even seem to be like a connection. Like in the same way that you're the part of the clothing on your body that is most close to your body is probably where you're sitting, and that is what you feel the least, because, you know, you're squeezed, but you could feel your shirt on your shoulders real easily. So like this idea of what we are most close to can sometimes be the most hidden because it's so friggin' close. Like to me, that's what it is. Like, you know, I know that there's something, I've seen it so many times in my life, that there's something going on, that I'm in connection with something. And I'm not saying it's just me, I'm just talking from my experience, that I don't know what it is, but I do know it's there. And it is not like, I see it through reflection, not through like touch.
I think that's a really interesting, and that's a great answer. I love that. I love the way you approach these doors. Okay. Now, okay, obviously you should be more aware than people in the UK. No pressure here, by the way, Michael. The next story is from the ET, the umbrella of ET. Why are they here? Now, in your country, your Pentagon a few months ago, it wasn't a disclosure, it was just, but whatever it was, you know, said they're real. Okay, so your country is more open, consciously open to the experience of these beings per se than the UK government, because they're not open to anything. Okay, you know, they could jump out of the sky and they'll still say they're not here. I don't know what you're looking at. So from your truth, and obviously in the part of the world that you're in, why? I know my truth is they've always been here. They've always been part of us from the beginning. And also, if we do our research, you know, to our ancestors or ancient civilizations, wall art, cave art, books, even in religions, they've always been here. That's not the era I'm going to. Recently, and I suppose when I mean recently, I'm talking from around about, I'm just going to make it easy, from 2017 onward, but really recently. There is more awareness of them all of a sudden. And in the last year, definitely more, there's more contact, there's more experiences, like you said, non-physical. I mean, they can come in physical shape and form, they can come in the physical matter, or they just come in and you're aware they're there with information and a knowing, you just know, a synchronicity or something. So, on the back of that, why do you think let me rephrase it, why are they making themselves now, these other beings or civilizations, whatever, so well known now, to the extent that your Pentagon has to say something? Why do you think? What's happening in the world? What's happening?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think everything that comes out of the government, everything that comes out of the media is you know, certain degrees of propaganda, certain degrees of misinformation or disinformation, that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of like I'll believe it when I see it sort of thing. And then particularly when you look at in the past 6 months, like in the beginning of 2021, there was all this talk of like, you know, big disclosure. There's never any big disclosure.
Never, ever.
Nothing. So, but what I think is so interesting, which I hadn't thought about until you kind of like position that question, doing the comparison between what the UK government does as it relates to talking about ET and what the US government does. And like, it's a little bit different. But really what I think is to me, the most interesting thing is like, why are there all these crop circles in the UK, but we don't have crop circles here in the United States?
You know what? I knew you were going to come out with that. Shut up. No, just stop it. You've digressed. No, we're not going to my crop circles. You get back in this door now and down the rabbit hole. No, we do have the crop circles. I'm terribly sorry. Yeah. Can you go back to my goddamn question? Come on, why are they here?
So I think that all the stuff that goes through the government, like, and so there's an assumption that the UK government and the United States government are separate governments.
No,
and on a certain level, that's true.
They're one.
And then like on a certain level, they're exactly the same. Yeah. So when you see particularly cultures which are as similar as as in the UK to the United States. Obviously, they're different, but they're a whole lot more similar than less similar.
Yes.
And when you see it played like, one does it this way and one's doing that way, like I just think that's like mind games. Like this is like
yeah, and that is mind games, but I'm not talking about your government. I used it as a reference point to the question. So come back to the question.
So the question is like, why now more than ever?
Why now are they here? And I'm talking, it's daily. There are videos that people, no matter what anyone does, they're coming out. There's contact being made. It's daily. There's what you can call downloads or information. And why do you think it's happening now? It's okay to say I don't know, but remember in the UK you can't put the Fifth Amendment here, but you can say I don't know.
So I don't know. I can't say for certain that there's more now than before. What I can say for certain is that there are more stories now than before, but I can't say like anything. So that's why I kind of like why I like grounded it in terms of like I'm suspect of all the stuff which comes. But that and that's why I brought up also the crop circles. Crop circles to me are like more tangible than like a TikTok video. But that being said, and I don't have it. This is kind of like where I sit on a like I don't know yet. I'm still looking and seeing how it unfolds. So there is seemingly a major like shift happening on life on Earth right now. And in my mind, I see like there's more than two, but I'm going to give just two possibilities. One is it's completely convoluted by like, control systems to like bring this on. And then the other possibility is there is a fundamental change happening in our environment. Regardless, like on the lowest common denominator, like there's big change happening right now. So and I don't know if this is true, but let's go with it. Like if like right now there's more contact, people are like having more experiences. Well, it's probably because there's like this change is either opening us up to seeing more or like if we get help from other people, like now would be the time that it comes through. But I would think it has to do with the timing of what's going on in life on Earth. Like I've always been intrigued by the idea of like ET shutting down all of the nuclear silos and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true or not. I know that's a story which I've read, and on that level it's true, but I can't say anything more than that. But I like that. Like, that's one of those things, like going back to the idea of you choose, is this a dangerous world or is this a friendly world? I like to think it's a friendly world. I choose to believe in that. And then along that perspective, like if there's more, well, it's probably because, now is like, whether it's the cavalry's coming or what have you, like, we're getting a little bit of assistance.
I mean, no, it's really interesting answer. I love from your truth. It's really interesting. An intelligent, interesting answer. I like that. Again, see how I'm perceiving this is from the orange analogy. Okay, so we're both at the moment. It's 2021. We're somewhere in September. I am in the future from you, but we are both experiencing what's going on at the moment. Okay, and we're observing and we're interpreting our way of understanding it. So that's why your answer is still perfect. So I want to, the last door in this, but it doesn't mean that the conversation ends, is why are they interested in us? Now, even going off the back of what you just said, if we worked on your analogy, well, maybe something's coming. I mean, my truth at the moment, my part of the orange, my experience, something is coming. I'm not quite sure, but there have been numerous shifts in consciousness, and even if you do a bit of research on recent history, how consciousness has expanded and creativity is coming from everywhere. That's the shift in the evolution of the Homo sapiens sapien. We become immensely creative because as consciousness expands, so to speak. So could be that they're more interested in us because we're at that level now where we can shift out of the bogged down, I'm a limited human being and I'm a slave, or I'm this or that, whatever belief systems. And it's because we as individual conscious beings, the singularity, have expanded to an extent it's hit the collective, and something could happen. Now, I am similar to you, that I manifest my reality. So I'm making my choice. I've made my choice. My choice is done, and I'm choosing to experience a positive, expansive reality, rich, visual, and to break away from the Homo sapiens sapien traits. Does that make sense to you? So on the back of that, can I now ask you, if you're creating your reality, yeah, at this point of what we spoke about, you know, with what's going on at the moment, what are you going to choose? What experiences, where would you like your experience to go now?
Remember I said earlier how like I like to I live my life kind of like in the path of least resistance. And so what that means is like they're being very conscious of the feedback loop of outer life and inner life. So part of it is like, let's see how this all like kind of unfolds. So there's that on a personal level, like, you know, I have certain anchors with family, which is like, I know that I'm staying in a certain place for a certain time. So as it relates from that very practical level, like, what are you going to do? I don't know. But this is what I have been doing. And when I do this, like I look at, I make a lot of stuff. I'm really kind of crafty. Had a couple of years where I was just an artist. And looking at when you make something by hand, that, you know, it's something much bigger than just that. And particularly if you bring that away. So that being said, I like to make walking sticks. Like, and I make really, 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 really good walking sticks.
You know, my grandfather used to do that. Off topic, guys, sorry. My Irish grandfather used to carve the most exquisite walking sticks in Ireland. Yeah. Anyway, off topic. I do apologize.
And so what my sense is the fact that I'm being drawn to like make this, like that's what my internal compass is saying to me. It's like, do this, like of all the things you can do this. The process of making a walking stick is so fun and rich and deep for me. And, you know, what does a walking stick represent? You know, what is that a symbol of? Whether that's a symbol of a journey, whether that's a symbol of like, you know, going somewhere, all of those different sort of things. And then what the actual stick, which I'm creating, like, you know, what are the elements which I bring into it? So if there's anything, I think that I am preparing myself, like, you know, on a deeper level, like there's a conscious level, like, oh, I'm going to make a walking stick. Look at that. But then there's something deeper. The same deep thing that has led me through everything else, which has brought me to this moment, is seemingly putting me in that position. And at some point, like there's going to be some journeys. And so that's kind of what I'm sensing. And like what that journey is, you know, I'm waiting to see how that unfolds. There's one more thing I want to say before which ties into that, like as it relates to the ET phenomenon, like the alien phenomenon. You know, I'm a little bit knowledgeable in it, but there's kind of like one school of thought of like the vessels which we see in the sky are created, like they're material vessels with like, you know, like advanced materials and all this sort of stuff. And then there's a higher level where the traveling vessels are actually just made of consciousness. So like there's like a material higher level, and then there's to me, like I am the idea of this, like everything being able to be controlled first through consciousness. And so this goes back to that travel, like making the walking stick, like that speaks to me very, very, very deeply. Like whether that's like, you know, I want it to be true, or whether that is true, or maybe our life works, maybe the reality works is like, well, whatever you identify with, you will bring about whatever that is. Like, that's kind of where I'm going. I'm like, there's a travel period, and there's got to be a freedom. That's one of the things which is so true to me, is like, I do not subscribe to the fact that we are imprisoned in the body and are imprisoned in this society and imprisoned in this world. I think that's an experience, but that can be transcended. So when you are able to be outside of that bubble, whomever, whatever is outside of that bubble, and then come in and out, like that's a skill set. It's a learned ability. And so maybe playing with that, like that's exciting to me, and like playfulness with that. So.
Yes, I love that. Now that I did love, that was beautiful. That was deep. That was profound. It was your truth. And I felt your truth there energetically. That is wonderful. I like when you speak of like with the craft, you know, back in the day, it was more so nuts and bolts. It's not now. It's consciousness taking shape and form. I love that. I love where you're coming from with that as well. And just on that statement you've just made there, you know, you've literally in a few words whizzed through the whole of the 8 doors. I'm going to add, because I'm in the UK and you can't faceplant me on the floor. You can't touch me. I'm elderly. What I've heard you, I've heard you talk about, you know, your hobby, your career, your passion, you know, Enochian magic and all the things you've gone through, and all, you know, all the experiences you've had researching, and how you go into that. We're not talking about that today. And not until now have I heard that passion come into this conversation in the latter part of it. So it's just my observation. Because any skill set we have of curiosity or creativity, we can always transfer it somewhere else. And it's so organic, and revitalize it in another area. And through this absolutely fantastic conversation with you, the first part, it wasn't there, but you hit the second part, I'd like about 4 doors in, and you started to flow with the passion. I've heard you speak about what you do elsewhere, and that's beautiful. And I always say, you know, to recognize the potentiality in another is not only inspiring for the other, but it's inspiring for me, because then it just mirrors back to me. Well, God, I got that potentiality too. So maybe I will go off and really research my ancestors. I haven't got time, Michael. I haven't got time. So, okay, on the conversation we've had, how are we doing for time now? Yeah, we've come up. We're just about on our time. Is there anything on this topic that we've discussed today, like, you know, it's a new conversation for us both, that you would like to add at all? Anything?
No pressure. Well, it's funny because I'm admittedly, I'm a very like in my head sort of person. Like, I like ideas, I like research and like concepts and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what I think is more significant and a better compass than like utilizing like our logic is like, you know, your feeling. Like, what do you want to do? You know, like kind of what you just said, you know, you cracked my nut. You were able to open me up and get me to like the flow, which I wasn't there in the beginning. And so like that flow energy comes from like, that was my level of like magic / creativity. And that's really what I think is the most important stuff, is like when we find that, and it should be something which doesn't cost money, you don't need to go and get educated for.
I agree.
It is like, like this human experience, ultimately how we move through it has to come from your own backyard. And I use that as a metaphorical and a literal turn of a phrase.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Do you know what? I knew this would be fantastic, and I look forward to you being on my live show later in the year. Thank you very much for coming and having a conversation with me. It's been fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the audience has enjoyed it. I'm sure you will. And before we close, I just would like to do my auto cue again, because I've got to be a bit professional now and again. So you can find Inception Podcast on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, where you'll also find Forbidden Knowledge News, Beyond Classified, Day Zero, The Dawson Files, Raised by Giants, and myself. Thank you for watching this podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, guys. Bye for now.